Okay.
Thanks. All right. For the recording's sake, we just voted to approve the minutes from our special meeting in March, as well as our regular meeting. And now we're reviewing the financials from the month of March. So we started March with a balance of $64,000 and change. These are the checks that cleared our account in March, primarily payments related to the ADLN grant, except for our 2 checks from February and March for my fee. And then we wrote a check that hasn't cleared our accounts yet to Greater Hudson Promise Neighborhoods, and figuring that in, our ending balance is $41,000, $310.78. Yeah. Are there any other financial documents that you think it makes sense to review in this section?
Sarah, can you, oh, there you go. Stay right there for 1 second. Just get numbers. I'm good.
Great. Our balance sheet would just reflect these same numbers and a whole bunch of other things that haven't changed. So that's where we are. And then we have 4 invoices that are with us as of this morning. The first one is for me. So let me do a full screen share. So you can see this is my invoice. This was in your inbox, so just documenting it here for the public. We have an invoice from Next Level Consulting. They are the organizers from Buffalo who have been supporting the Housing Justice Fellowship. And this, they didn't send us an invoice in February, so this reflects work performed in February and March, and it's within budget of the way that we organize the fellowship stipend, the fellowship training payments, so they're on target there. We also have from HCHC, likewise, reimbursements for the 5 fellow stipends and a small contribution to the staff support that makes the fellowship possible, and some mileage expenses there. And then the last one is a new one, and that is from Lazy Studio, which is a great name. Here we are. And this is, Michelle can tell us more about this invoice, actually. Would you mind doing that, Michelle?
Sure. So at the last meeting, we discussed that under the ADLN grant, we were hiring a graphic designer slash like public relations consultant using ADLN outreach funds. So this is the first half of her her team's invoice. So what she's been doing is working on creating infographics about housing facts and what we're up to, and working on creating like a strategy for reaching different groups in Hudson, and has been doing a lot of research so far. So this is the first half of that contract.
Right. So we'll pay out, if we approve it, we'll pay out this $1,500 first. Okay. Does anyone have any questions about the bills? One other thing I'll add is that we're still waiting on our final invoice from UHY. I've followed up with them, but so that's coming, but we should have the funds available for that. Okay, if there are no questions or concerns, then we just need a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Can we pause for 1 second?
Oh, sure.
Thanks.
Are you, oh, you're just catching up on the notes there.
Yeah, but you're flying. I'm like, holy crap, I can't type this fast. Thank you.
Great. So with no opposing, we will continue on with our agenda into old business. So the first order of old business is the ADLN program update. So I'll throw it to Michelle.
Thanks. Hey, everybody. So basically, we're in the transition period right now where the ADLN grant is finishing up. So it ended March 31st. We had some unspent funds. We had an opportunity to like capture those funds so they weren't sent back to enterprise. And so the ADLN team, which was Kamal, Michael Canillas, Rebecca Wolf, Calvin Lewis, Dan Kent, Surya McGriff, and Louisa Borges, they and myself completed a plan of how to use those funds, and then enterprise approved that plan. So we will be doing a few more ADLN invoices as we complete these projects over the next few months. So what that looks like is continuing the Hudson routes. So Promise Neighborhood has had huge need for these rental assistance. So they've already used up the 9,000. They've helped 10 households for a total of 23 people. And with all those households, it was issues in which those families were unable to access other rental assistance and were at threat of eviction. And so Promise Neighborhood worked with their landlords to bring them up to date with back rent. So most of the funds we have left will go to that to help families who are still unable to access the other rental assistance programs that are in the area. And then the other things the funds will be used for that the team approved was, the graphic designer who's doing a whole kind of outreach strategy, continuing for attorney fees for the Housing Trust Fund, some more outreach as we're continuing the surveys, and looking at hiring a consultant to help execute and implement some of the strategies of our affordable housing plan. So then the transition part is that we're also moving from ADLN into the Housing Trust Fund. And so the Housing Trust Fund, this is something that Sarah and I and the board members and stuff are going to have to work out with our attorneys what the exact relationship looks like between the Housing Trust Fund and your board. And so once we have that understood, then we can go through what are the responsibilities of HCDPA with the Housing Trust Fund board. So it's all very transparent and you know what to expect. Where we're at right now is that y'all nominated the board members. So they had their first meeting last week and they created their declaration of trust. So now they're an official Housing Trust Fund. And I'm working on the tax paperwork side to get the legal bank account started. They're working on what their grant guidelines are going to look like. And then the piece that we have to kind of figure out, and by we, like Sarah and myself and the attorneys and the board, is looking at kind of how the Housing Trust Fund will pay admin fees to HCDPA, because we're using some shared services like bookkeeping, and we're gonna have separate insurance, but might share some legal fees, etc. And then looking at in terms of most likely the Housing Trust Fund board's gonna have an operational budget and then a program budget, and the general activities of those budgets will be presented to you to approve. But then once the general activity line is approved, then the Housing Trust Fund board has the autonomy to figure out how exactly they want to disperse those funds. So for example, they might say we're going to do X amount to rental assistance, X amount to new development, and once a year you guys will vote on yes or no with those amounts, but then they will be the ones to execute and implement that. So these are things that we're creating this all from scratch. So we're figuring it out right now, like the details. And so expect that next time I come, I'll have some more specifics about what this relationship is. And know that we are still looking to build that board out a little bit more, about 2 more members. So you guys have provided some great suggestions for board members. We're still looking for some more, and we'll be doing some more outreach for that. We did one pop event at the school parent teacher night, and we got about 35-40 surveys filled out. We've got a couple more pop-up events planned, so looking to keep reaching more people about this Housing Trust Fund. Yeah, any questions?
Thank you for all your work, Michelle.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, thank you.
Oh, I had one thing I wanted to add, which is, I don't think did you mention that part of the final the grant expense plan includes closing out the administrative line to the HCDPA?
Oh, no. Yeah, so we think it was about $6,800, but some of that might include your salary for when you do bookkeeping for the grant. So we are putting in about to contribute to HCDPA's admin and fees to help cover some of that.
So that's $6,800 that will be able to contribute to the costs of the audit for last year and things like that. That'll just sort of go into our general fund for covering those expenses. Okay, does anyone have any questions for Michelle? I guess you already said that. All right, that included we had a separate agenda item for the housing fund updates. So Michelle already covered that. And now we can move ahead to HHA updates.
Hi, everyone. I'm here with the same update. I would love for HCDPA and HHA to allow us to put all the properties in our RFQ. I would like for us to come up with a number. I know back when we were talking about a number we would need to keep the lights on, and I'm still moving in that direction, and I would love for us to be able to do that. I know that Nick has been working with the accountant on numbers to see what we are able to afford. I know Nick has and correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, you do have another meeting next week with the accountant so she can actually break down the appropriate line that we would be able to use this type of funding for. So yeah, HHA is still in the same direction of getting all of the properties put into our RFQ, letting the developer decide what we can use, and whatever we can't use, we just give back. So that's the only update that we have. I don't know if you like to jump in, Nick, and say anything else, but I'm still singing the same tune.
Nope, I think you said it all pretty well, Ravonda. We are, as a result of some of the changes that are currently happening, we're engaging in lots of conversations with HUD, with the city, with the state, in terms of coming up with a new plan for the housing authority in relation to the condition of Bliss Towers and the low rise. And so these properties are definitely becoming more and more, having more and more potential value for the housing authority. And so as we have these meetings over the next month or so, as a new director comes in, I think I look forward to working with HCDPA to come up with an agreement. So yeah, more to come in the next month, I would say. But that's it from my side.
What is the status of the search?
It's in the board's hands right now, so maybe Ravonda could give an update on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So this coming Friday, we will actually be sent a list of candidates from the firm, and we'll be able to sit down and have one-on-ones with all the candidates, but they will be sending the board a list of all the candidates this Friday that they currently have.
Anyone have any other HHA related questions for Nick and Ravonda? That puts us into our next agenda item, which is the ongoing conversation about the HCDPA properties. Because of the additional $6,800 from the administrative line for the ADLN grant, I would say we're in much less dire of a financial position than we were a few months ago, because the audit won't get us, pretty close to being zeroed out. And so we are having an ongoing discussion about how to proceed raising funds to meet our bottom line for this year and going into the next year. And a reminder that our annual carrying costs, I've been estimating them to be about $25,000 over the last couple of years. That's legal fees and audit and administration, which includes bookkeeping and just checking the boxes for being a public agency. So with that, let's open it up. How is the board sitting with this ongoing conversation about the properties?
One thing I can add, and this is gonna be hard, how do I type this and speak at the same time? We talked to a couple of, now granted, they're not appraisers, but in terms of the value of the properties, given that, again, a lot of the comps that we were drawn against are from 2018, we had a local realtor look at it, and based on the initial comps pulled and what going rates are in general, they feel confident that we would actually look for about 5% over what's in that current appraisal. So I would want to talk to whether that's Victoria or Chris Shale, I forget who's replacing for right now, but how could we look to tweak the appraisal if necessary so that it's updated to accurately reflect going out for sale now versus 2 years ago pre-pandemic.
So did we do the first step in terms of retaining the attorney so we could move forward? I mean, that's, I think, the first step before any of this conversation about the legal and property, that we need the attorney. So are we moving forward with Victoria?
That's our next order of business, is to approve the engagement letter. Yes, so if the board approves the engagement letter, then yes, we can.
Okay. I just think, the next step would be that, and then when the legal person's on board, and then we can have the property conversation.
Okay. Do any other of the board members want to speak on it? It's a choice point that we, are entertaining at some point around the how HHA is asking us to make properties available for an RFQ, and this balance between raising money to meet our annual needs.
I think we've got to go in some form 50-50, right? I think that there is, someone's getting a Microsoft update. Is that me or you?
Not me.
Oh, one of us is. I obviously understand that we are the pivot point that can help to make some of this easier, but at the same time, I want to make sure that it's not just fully affordable rental housing that's on the market, right? I mean, like, what is the broader plan? I think I'd like to understand, like, how we're getting a striation of housing that works for all areas in which we need it within Hudson right now. And all I hear so far is that let's put them all into one bucket for one purpose and potential. So I'd like us all to have more discussion again once we've got legal counsel on understanding, like, which properties. I know Nick in the last meeting detailed out that the Front Street property might not be of interest to them. So I think we just need to sort through the stack and say, okay, we were to say, here's where we can commit to supporting the goals of literally the chessboard of pieces that we have to move around in order to get people into safer housing, to remediate, to build things back and better. And then at the same time, where can we seek development for other funds and uses? So that it's almost, from our perspective, Sarah, I would recommend that we've got a joint approach on the issue. I think that best serves the interest of all parties and the community as well. Particularly as it would get properties back and under ownership back on the tax rolls too.
And I just want to give some people some information I learned when I became chair and got on this board of how HCDPA came about and how it's a sister agency to HUD. And the only HUD agency in Columbia County is HHA. And another thing is it was created so Black and brown people weren't displaced. So I don't know if anybody needs some history, because I was able to speak to people that were first started on this board. And the first thing they told me was all of those properties are supposed to go to the housing authority. It was created off of HUD. Now, I don't want to give up a fight with anybody. I really don't, but the paperwork is out there. We are the sister agency to HCDPA. And whoever needs to do history, research, because I done did it all, I suggest you do it.
I appreciate it, Ravonda. I mean, at the same time too, I'm thinking longer term of how do we actually create a system where we can get more money back in to HCDPA, where it can almost perpetually do more for the community that needs it too, right? So rather than
And this is why,
rather than selling at a rock bottom price for a one-time sale, how are we going to make sure we maximize and invest so that, like what Michelle's trying to do with the trust fund, there's a perpetual motion of money that can be coming in so that we can continue to invest it in ways that support the community. That's what I don't have the understanding and picture of yet, and what I want us to all think through, so that it's not just an instant fix just for today, but that people aren't sitting here in our position 20, 30 years from now. And we've got another organization like the HCDPA where we're almost completely defunct of money. The HHA, and I know this isn't a reflection on current management, but we can kind of argue that it hasn't been the best managed over the past 30 years, right? So the building has fallen into disrepair. So how do we learn from that past experience to make sure with what we move forward with helps to become self-sustaining so we don't end up back in this situation in 30 years?
and I totally agree with what you're saying. And this is why from the beginning, when I first came on this board, I said HHA wanted to be in partnership with HCDPA. We can both keep this thing rolling. And that's what I first came here to do. I'm willing to keep doing it, or I'm willing to just take the property. I'm willing to fight for it. I will not give up. There is no need, no reason that the Hudson Housing Authority should not be able to put these properties in our RFQ, and whatever we can't use, give back. And we all be in a partnership, and we all make sure in 30 years, none of us have to come clean it up again. Know that I was born and raised there. I'm 34 years old. My parents still live there. 50% of my family still live there. I'm not here to come to play the games. I'm here to get it done. Now, when we get a lawyer on, I would love for the two lawyers, HHA and HCDPA lawyers, to get together and figure out how we can keep it rolling with us getting those properties.
Sarah, do we have a motion or anything to, excuse me, to retain the lawyer? Because I know we tried to do that at the special meeting.
We have an engagement letter, and then our next order of business. I've just been going, just sort of repeating the order, and yeah, we can approve the engagement letter from Christine Shale and Victoria Polidoro when we're done with this conversation.
Okay.
Which I just want to reflect back. I'm hearing a lot of resonance in what both of you are saying in terms of wanting to sustain long-term resources.
That's the biggest thing is, I look at it as not a business for the city, but as a business where there needs to be an engine that money can come back into the HCDPA to be able to give into the functions of the HHA, right? So whether that's going to become an improvements, I mean, look what our charter is, right? I mean, it's on our website, fighting blight, doing the improvements, helping the community that is in need. What I worry about is I don't know what that self-sustaining engine is yet. So Ravonda, exactly to your point, let the attorneys help us figure out like, what is the investment strategy? Maybe 2 of the properties don't go in it because they are sold for different development purposes at a higher rate based on whoever would bid for them. And then is that money then invested where I don't even think, Sarah, do we have an investment arm that we've done anything with our money in the past, right? So how do we take money to put it into something to make it grow where the dividends come back into the program so we can do more with it for the community? Right? Like that's like, it is a strategic investment in terms of like what I'm thinking of, like part of the money needs to be self-generating so we can continue to have money and fund, because we're not all going to be able to live off of just the grant money that came from the ADLN, right? So how do we perpetuate even that and live up to what the ethos of this board is supposed to do? One of us got to hit the lottery. I'm telling you, that would be problem solving number 1. But
I think that the need for a long-term revenue plan is something that has been repeatedly brought up in our audit and brought up by past attorneys, and I'm sure will become a part of the conversation with the next attorney that we hire. And in the new business, there's a section on board procedures where that's really me wanting to initiate a conversation about how we actually proceed with long-term planning. The good news is that because of the small influx of cash from the ADLN administrative line item, we're not in the same position that we were in January, where it's like we have to make a decision like very soon about whether or not we will sell a piece of property to raise the short-term funds that we need, which I think a lot of the board members felt uncomfortable with for lots of different reasons, whether they're new board members and it was too soon, or that would take the property out of the mix for HHA's needs, or just selling property again seems kind of like this a consequential solution to a short-term problem that forecloses long-term solutions. So this is sort of like there's been a jumble of timing issues where, you know, HHA's needed to be able to be clear on what's happening next. And that's like something that we're, you know, y'all are having to piece together as you move forward down the process of, you know, finding a new ED. And the same is true over here, finding, you know, securing legal counsel so we can make some of these long-term plans. So it sounds like our next step is to work with our attorney and to get the 2 attorneys together and to try to build out a mental map of, like the first mental map we described with confirming that HCDPA and HHA have like a sisterhood in terms of their point of origin and their shared purpose, and figuring out how to move forward so that we can use the resources that we have to do long-term sustainable housing solutions. That's my little summary of change I just heard.
Well, my thought is, you know, we can't kick the can down the road financially anyway. We know that's going to come around the corner. And, you know, HHA has already said what property they don't need. So I think getting the attorney on board is priority 1, short term. Short term is still look at that property that HHA doesn't need and dispose of that so we can have some, you know, financial. And then, you know, as the new ED comes on board for HHA and everything, then I think we all would be in a better space to have these conversations. So I think initially, you know, Short term should be the attorney, still work on what property works to sell, because again, in 6 months, we're gonna be having this conversation financially, that we don't have the money. So I just think there should be some of the plans going, there's no way that we should not entertain this property in a partnership with HHA, but let's make the other things happen first. So it's gonna happen. Oh, I must have been on mute. I'm sorry.
No, we heard you. I heard you. And Ryan, I have I'll make sure you have access to this recording. So if you need to go back and make amendments for the notes. Does anyone else have any comments they'd like to make on this?
No, but I say we move to retaining the lawyer.
Okay, so let's move to our next order of business, which is to, great. I'm going to share my screen and show the engagement letter from Rodenhausen, Shale, and Polidoro. It is here. We looked at it briefly at the special meeting. So this specifies that Victoria Polidoro and Christine Shale will be the principal attorneys supporting the HCDPA, and so they'll both be working with us. They are specifying that we'll pay a retainer, and then they'll bill at these hourly fees, which I don't need to enumerate, but that's been pretty consistent with what I've seen with other attorneys that we've engaged. Payment of invoices, an agreement that will be in full cooperation with them and that will follow the rules, essentially. Just trying to go through some of this as boilerplate. We both have the right to terminate the relationship. That's right. This is all a pretty standard engagement letter. So does anyone have any questions about this engagement letter or anything that they want to see? If not, then we can have a motion to approve this relationship to approve working with Rodenhausen, Shale, and Polidoro as our legal counsel.
Motion.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Sounds like no. All right. That's great. I will get this printed and bring it to Ravonda to have it signed tomorrow, and I'll let Victoria and Christine know. And then we can work on, I can have some meetings with them in the meantime and try to prepare some ideas if we can maybe sync up with HHA's attorneys in the meantime, and then come back next month with a draft roadmap for what could come next.
Repeat. I'm sorry, repeat what you just said.
That between now and the next board meeting, I can try to broker a meeting between our attorneys and the HHA's attorneys to just get a sense of what options are in the air, which is something that we did before with our previous attorney. So that we can be prepared to have a more productive conversation at the next meeting. Okay, to new business. So there's two items in new business that are kind of interrelated. I did submit the annual report to the authority's budget office, and we, in that process, we're showing the ABO what our procurement procedures are, what our bylaws are, where that information is held. But I do think that HCDPA can do a better job, both like within our board and our personal knowledge. I know that with all these new board members that have come on, there's been procedures that are murky, and they've been murky to me too, as somebody who started in September. And as we look ahead to next year's ABO, we need to say that that our governance committee, which is comprised by all members of the board, have done an annual review of the procedures, and including, the ways that we guarantee, monitor and guarantee that there aren't conflicts of interest, the ways that we procure services, including our auditor. I'm looking for help in this new business. I'm just looking for help or ideas for how to move forward if we need to. I think it would be helpful if in the next few meetings we have a just all board review of our baseline procedures. But I could use help from 1 or 2 board members in just putting that information together and thinking about how to present it to the board and to the public. Likewise, I need help sort of setting a direction for how to respond to some of the issues that were raised in the audit, specifically the issue of missing paperwork for the loan with Galvin, and the issue of the lack of segregation of duties, where I'm the bookkeeper and the administrator. Teresa and I have already resolved, or Teresa and I have been working together to make sure that for example, that the 2 signatures on checks process is being followed. But I remember hearing that the board might consider hiring a separate bookkeeper or an accounting advisor or something like that. So these are my topics for new business.
Sarah, I would help you. But where did you hear that from, that the board was going to hire a separate?
Not from anywhere official. I think maybe just like a one-on-one conversation with somebody. It was someone's idea. Like, what if we hired accounting, or that somebody had thought about it, but not nowhere official.
All right.
And Ryan, you and I had talked a few months ago about thinking about just making sure that the board has a more standardized expectation around email communication and scheduling special meetings, and where all the even things like record storage and file naming conventions and things like that have never really been standardized for the agency, that would make it really easy or make it much easier for somebody coming into this position whenever I leave it to take it over. So those are the things that I'm seeking help with.
I would love to sign up for them, but right now there's more than enough on my plate. I really can't sign up to take on administrative things that should have, this isn't a blame on you, but administrative things that should have been in place beforehand. So I'm going to gracefully bow out of accepting more work on that.
Okay. Well, then Teresa and I can work together to pull that information together and present it to the board next month or over the next few months.
Okay.
Does anyone else want to support that, or Teresa and I can take it on?
Looks like it's me and you, girl.
Sounds good to me. We've been doing a good job already. And then
I'll help out as much as I can.
Okay. So maybe Teresa and I can take a first pass and then kick it to you for thinking through.
Yes, that's exactly.
Yeah,
we'll do the legwork and you can do the overseeing.
Okay. The management response to the audit. We also submitted our audit and our ABO annual report both on time. There is a need to follow up with the issue of the lack of paperwork with the loans to Galvin. I've reached out to Dan Kent, but it's been a while, and I can follow back up about this issue.
Sarah, can we, would that be something for our new legal people to take on?
That's a great point too. So I can onboard.
Yeah, that would relieve you from that, because it is a legal issue in a sense, isn't it?
I suppose it is.
And if legal sends them a letter, it's a documented letter that can follow go with us, with them to court if we have to, but I know it's not gonna happen.
Yeah. And we're also specifically, I mean, in terms of our audit, we're seeking origination paperwork for some of these loans. So it's possible that they have those things in hand.
They have so many hands in the pockets of the city. I can't see how they just won't pay this agency when they're working with several others and we're all city. So I think we just gotta keep them informed and they'll pay us soon.
All right. So it sounds like for this next step of planning, Teresa and I are going to take a first step, discuss it with the mayor, and then follow up with the rest of the board next month. And then in general, I mean, I think we need to look ahead as a board to having some sort of long-term strategic planning process, but it sounds like that's what we're working toward with these ongoing conversations about the RFP and the properties with HHA and our legal counsel. So we'll make progress.
The other element, Sarah, the other question I have for you is with our auditors, is there any form of ongoing relationship where we'd be able to bring them into the discussions with legal, right? Because the auditors are going to know where we're going to be able to actually get money back in ways that will help, or money to set aside to invest, or channels and avenues and ways for us to do so that we can support that. But again, to the point of accounting, if we're not going to hire a CPA, which I know we probably don't have the budget for, is there any in-kind that UHY can provide us, given the nonprofit status of both organizations?
I can reach out to them and see. I know that that's something that they do, and something that we, reported that we did not do last year on the ABO. So it's something that is expected of us. So, or it's a possibility. So I can reach out to them.
Perfect.
And Ryan, you're talking about if we even do this just on a one-term basis and use that for going forward.
Yeah, because the thing that we're missing within the report, as Sarah was pointing out, is that they flagged us and saying like, there's no long-term strategy that they can see that this organization stays afloat with, which is part of the discussion I was having with Ravonda, is that if we are here to exist in the long term to help, we need to figure out like what that investment strategy is, whether that's in, I mean, I'm just gonna, use basic nomenclature here, but like, it's the concept of like money market accounts, right? It's like, where are we housing our money so that we're actually getting interest and dividends on it, so that we actually have money to be able to help HHA and other organizations when the time comes. Otherwise, we run the bank account like we're sitting right now down to zero, and then what do? Right? We're insolvent.
I understand and I agree. Because I've asked the question too, right, Sarah? Remember I've asked that question to you. Is this agency going to continue?
Yeah, you're not the first. And the board has considered dissolution a couple of times over the last couple administrations. So
I see.
Yeah. And in the past, we've had more stable revenue streams. So this really is a kind of a hollow point for the agency in terms of, we've sold off lots of properties and we stopped managing the programs that we did. The one thing that we're not really discussing in terms of long-term viability is managing, the ADLN grant, the way that we designed the administrative line. I think that some members of the ADLN team have, said to me that there was part of the way that it's managed, the way that we, for example, paid St. Catherine's, and then there was like a line item that's a sort of flat percentage for everything that for all the work that they do. There's like a flat percentage on top that helps cover their administrative overhead, and then across all the accounts that they work with, that line adds up to support their overhead. And so if we, as an agency, were working with the Housing Justice Director's office and other potential partners in the city and aggressively pursuing additional grants to bring those resources into the city, that's another, it's, what Ryan's talking about, investments. I mean, I think, yeah, if we really want to diversify the ways that we can support ourselves, then I think pursuing additional programmatic work like that is an essential thing too.
And that will keep the ABO off of our backs.
And it's, so if we have an investment portfolio that has some dividends, that can help cover
a lot.
yeah, a lot, but
You figure a basic dividend of anywhere between $25,000 and $30,000 is the operational overhead cost of this organization.
yeah, I don't really know how we get to that.
You gotta talk to accountants, right? Like they can figure out exactly where we can park in place, right? And then we need to know exactly what we scale up against in terms of sale and startup capital that we would need to invest.
And then we have to balance that with our mission because the agency has always been about making land affordable for affordable development. So we have to
Correct.
balance like the sale price that we set, or any deal that we negotiate with that dream. But Michelle, you turned your camera on. Were you going to chime in?
Am I allowed to, or sorry, I can public comment.
I think you're allowed to chime in.
Okay. I would just want to say that, first of all, if the Housing Trust Fund now exists underneath HCDPA, and so that relationship means that the survival of one depends on the survival of this board. But also, in terms of thinking not just like we need money in order to exist to pay to exist, like lots of other urban renewal agencies are really, really strong in their community in terms of receiving grants for housing rehab, for doing different types of pilot programs, for doing different types of like, and by pilot, I mean like initiating small things, not tax abatements. And they're the recipients of a lot of grants because as a public benefit corporation, you have a lot of freedom that a municipality doesn't. And considering that we don't have a housing economic development office or like a planning office, I think something I can do is I can bring examples from other urban renewal agencies to you guys for future to think about like, actually, what does this organization want to do in the future? And it could be something where, you know, if you receive grants regularly, then that pays a lot of the fees because most of them do have like a 10% admin, whatever. And then this way, like there's the need in Hudson for a lot of housing work. And so this board could be more active in that in the future once we have like all this basic stuff figured out.
Yeah, we can build our capacity to be more effective.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's a couple of different, that's options moving forward. Michelle, maybe you and I can also work together on thinking about how to present a sort of long-term strategic planning process to the board, because I know that's something that you have experience with, though your plate is very full.
And the city also just retained like a new grant writing team who's got a lot of expertise, and they've worked with urban renewal agencies too, and so that can also be a resource for us in thinking about like programmatically what can this body be doing in the future.
Okay, that's great news. Yeah. All right. I feel like that satisfied my needs in terms of figuring out how to proceed with the closeout of the ADLN on some of these processes. So unless anybody has any additional comments or questions, I think that satisfies the new business for me.
Public comment.
Public comment? All right, would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Oh, go ahead, Rabonda. 12:55, I will second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All
Bye,
right.
everyone.
Ryan, the Zoom cloud, I think, lives with Michael Hoffman.
Perfect.
And if he's there, he can confirm or deny, but
Yes, correct.
okay,
I'll send the recording from them.
Thank you.
all right, take care, everyone.